Can you hear me? Perfect. I'm Rebecca Estoesta, and I'm with the City of Toronto. I'm one of 6 ergonomists there at the city, and I've been asked to speak on how we are dealing with the increased demand. This is not going down. Yep, there we go. How we've responded to the increased requests for sit-stand workstations. As you know, in the media, it's been everywhere. This was discussed this morning. So definitely over the last 3 years, the amount of requests have dramatically increased. So I'm going to share with you some of the strategies we've used and implemented, and how we go about accommodating people's requests, either on an individual medical accommodation. I'm going to touch on office modernization. It's something that's coming in as a proactive approach, and then standards and guidelines. So when we get, due to the increased demand for sit-stand workstations, our first line of defense is our standard procedure that we implement for office requests. So we have a lot of self-help material online, and we recommend that the individual follow through with that and ensure that their current workstation is set up properly, 'cause sometimes that can be the trigger. Once they complete that, we do have additional communication on tips to get up and move. This was discussed. You don't need a sit-stand workstation to get up and move. City of Toronto, we have very few functions that are tied to your workstation outside of our call centers and command centers. So simple things like reminding people to get up when the phone rings, or we do have it articulating keyboard trays. So they do allow people to stand up for short periods and type. And then, as was discussed earlier, trying to lay out their work over the course of the shift to make sure they're varying their postures with their tasks. Other things we have in our tip sheet that was communicated to all staff was working meetings, making sure you're getting up and walking over to your colleagues, not sending that email, taking public transit. We have a lot of sites that we travel between, so walking or taking public transit versus personal vehicles. So based on the first step, I guess, when we do require an accommodation, we do ask for a professional's health note. This is to ensure that there's no medical contraindications with prolonged standing or using a sit-stand workstation, because we are aware that there are some concerns. This also helps some divisions with that cost and justification of allocation of why this person gets it and not this person, so that we have found helps the divisions to support them. And there's 3 strategies that we currently use for individual and medical accommodation. One is using our existing articulating keyboard. The second is the tabletop device. And the third is a height adjustable table. So just to speak to our experience with each of these solutions at the city, the keyboard tray is positive because most people have this already installed. So it's quick, no cost, easy time. Negative, we find that obviously doesn't accommodate all people for a standing workstation. And for short periods, we'll encourage people to adjust their monitor height or tilt and raise their keyboard. Just to have that switch up throughout the day. And some people will use this paired with a monitor arm. Desk mount, still less cost than a height adjustable table, easy to install, and transfers with the employee as they move throughout the division or between divisions. Negatives, it's quite large. It does take up a lot of space in the workstation, so not all workstations can accommodate this type of equipment. So we need to ensure the rollback space is there, as well as a lot of our desks right now are L-shaped, so making sure when they swing to their non-computer workstation that they have that knee well space. And the big thing for us is ensuring that the keyboard tray is below the work surface to accommodate that seated elbow height for our population at the city. So then the second or third point we're going to talk about is office modernization. So this is new with the city. Facilities come to council with a strategy to reduce real estate costs. And in doing so, they want to roll out 100% height adjustable tables. So we were thrilled. We were like, this is great. We'll get in on the design phase and we'll make it right the first time. So they wanted to do the benching configuration. So that's just the layout. You can see benching and the densification. The struggles right away came when we tried to apply our the regulation for, or sorry, the guidelines for BIFMA, that height range of 22.6 to 48.7. We thought this would be easy to do. It's in the BIFMA guideline. We updated our, So we thought this would be easy to do. So internally, we had a lot of pushback from facilities with that range due to the cost, which we could understand. But our argument was our keyboard trays currently go down to 23 inches, and we had a hard time going with the single stage because it only came down to 27 inches, depending on the manufacturer. So there was a lot of back and forth discussion on that. And then once we had buy-in internally, we put our recommendations and worked on the specifications to include everything that we felt was necessary in the height adjustable table. In the procurement process, we had that range. And then when we went out to the furniture vendors, they were of the same mind as our internal partners. They're like, you're crazy, you can't go full range for 100% of the desks. And so as ergonomists, we were shocked at that as well, because we are always wanting to design for all, and the pushback was surprising that way, but the cost is an issue. So we did suggest the alternative, like not to go backwards with seated height adjustability and go to a single stage height adjustment table, but just for seated height. So that way you're accommodating everyone for seated height. But that was not accepted. The mandate for office modernization was to have seated sit-stand workstations. So that's been a big struggle for us, is trying to accommodate all. I think people forget when they move from a fixed height to a height adjustable workstation that that surface height is your input device height. On our fixed height, obviously we were standard 29 inches, but we always had that ability to accommodate with the keyboard tray. So really trying to educate the importance of accommodating that lower range and the upper range. What we did, my colleague put together an Excel calculator tool, because sometimes it's the way you present and how you communicate across between professions makes a difference. So, whoops. So what we did was made an Excel calculator where anyone could go in, type in the height ranges that were going to be provided, and it would spit out the percent of the population designed out at the low range and at the top range by gender using the Caesar data. So that was a great communication tool, and I feel that helped push to have the dual stage implemented. So another point I wanted to say, the importance of communication, and is a lot of work was done by our unit with specifications, so making sure that we had all the specifications laid out in the procurement process. Office design guidelines, make sure that we're updating it based on the latest guidelines. So we had updated it based on the BIFMA height ranges. created ergo tips for the end user, making sure we're communicating what's required out of that sit-stand workstation for the end user, as well as it was discussed earlier about using other people within your organization, so updating our joint health and safety inspection forms to include the required height ranges, as well as our training, our joint health and safety certification training. So just making sure that we're using all avenues to get to the end user to educate them. So this is just an example of the Excel spreadsheet that was put together that shows the % of the population designed out at different work surface heights that we found to be useful. Oh, sorry. Whoops, cycled through. So I think what I would like to see next is when we talk about the whole systems approach, and I think that would be a great discussion once we figure out the height adjustability, is how we make that work in the space to make sure that we're accommodating the function of the end user, whether it's an open space and what that means with the height of the screens and just the functional space. That's my presentation.